MicroStrategy has the potential to be the next $1 trillion company. Does it have something to do with Bitcoin? Let's find out in this video. Okay, here's the thing. You may have seen various tweets, articles, and congratulation posts towards Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, and there are various reasons for this. But rather than focusing on the success, or not only, I actually want to give you a deep dive in this video as to what MicroStrategy actually did with Bitcoin. See, MicroStrategy used to be one of these upcoming tech companies in the .com bubble, way in the days, like 24 years ago, over 24 years ago, that would promise a lot of data intelligence and services to be used to essentially gain an advantage over competitors. But ever since the mid-2000s, let's call it since 2005, the company has essentially been dead. I'm not talking about, not making revenue or anything, but it's just been a flat line if you at least look on their stock, because after all, they're a public company. And in 2020, Michael Saylor, back then still CEO, today he's the chairman, realized that he needs to do something different. So he was looking towards an asset where he could protect the company that would be inflation and bulletproof, and which would ideally also boost the company. He looked at stuff like gold or other alternative assets and wasn't really happy and satisfied with it, essentially because they were also a technology-first company. So he rediscovered Bitcoin in the end because he already heard about this. There are famous tweets of his where he basically called Bitcoin dead, and he started reading the Bitcoin Standard. And after finishing that book, he realized that he needs to get Bitcoin onto the balance sheet of the company ASAP. So in August of 2020, he started buying Bitcoin in large sums and accumulated more and more. At one point, he even crossed the 1% threshold of the network. So 1%, or at this point, over a percent of the 21 million coins will be attributed with MicroStrategy. And he therefore turned a company less than a technology company that was failing into more of a company that was thriving and actually using excess cash and reserves they had to stock up the company. He then quickly realized that accumulating Bitcoin essentially turned his company into the unofficial Bitcoin ETF. Of course, it's still a stock that's being traded at the NASDAQ, and of course, it's still a company, but it was an easy way to gain exposure into Bitcoin for other companies without actually buying Bitcoin themselves, because they couldn't do it for regulatory reasons, or they simply didn't want to have the risks associated with the technology itself. This development then led him to actually go a step further. Thus far, he just used cash reserves to buy Bitcoin. Now, he was actually issuing bonds, so he was issuing convertible notes in the form of bonds to then get capital, pay the capital back in the near future with revenue that is based on the value increase of the company. So what he essentially found is an infinite money glitch where he as a public company can issue debt, these convertible bonds, and then turn that money he gets from them into Bitcoin. And this first play actually worked quite well, to where he went, well, if I do it once, why shouldn't I do it again? So he then continuously, over a span of 4 years, made 40 Bitcoin purchases in total as the company MicroStrategy, and used all of these convertible notes and these bonds he issued with that excess cash and liquidity to further stack up Bitcoin. The play is quite simple. The more Bitcoin he buys and the more exposure the company gets and the more valuable it gets, the easier it will be for him to pay back his debt. Saying he issues $1 billion in debt, and within a lifespan of after buying Bitcoin, his company increases by $4 billion. It's quite easy to take $1 billion out of that revenue. He doesn't even have to sell Bitcoin at this point, pay back the debt or issue the yield that he's getting out on these convertible notes, and then continue doing this as much or as long as he can. So what are the key takeaways for you as a business if you're watching this? Not every business I know is a public traded company. So not everyone has the opportunity to issue bonds right away, take that cash and buy Bitcoin, but you can start small and issue cash that you have laying around into Bitcoin and use this as a reserve asset. This can be if you have excess revenue, like we've seen with Tether, for example, who put portions of their revenue each quarter into Bitcoin. Or it can simply be that you say, no, each month we dedicate a certain amount of our monthly revenue because we've got enough in the bank and we can meet all of our obligations to then allocate to Bitcoin and use like a company DCA. Whatever the strategy is, it's clearly working for a public company like MicroStrategy because you are backing your company essentially with Bitcoin. And it's definitely also a strategy you can see on a much smaller scale and one that can work for many different fields. But if you now need a partner that actually helps you get this done, look no further than Relai Business. Our dedicated relationship manager, Mario, is here and ready to help you. So if you have questions, want to buy Bitcoin as a company, or just get in touch, use the link below this video and he can help you and get you sorted out. And that's it. That's how MicroStrategy turned a pretty flat and low-laying company into a multi-billion company, Xing the value for their shareholders and safeguarding the company into the future by simply buying and holding Bitcoin. It definitely is a playbook that will be replicated. It's actually also something Saylor urges people to do, and we'll see in the future which companies will do the same.